Every living thing on Earth is part of an environment, and within that environment, organisms must interact with both living and non-living things to survive. These interactions help create patterns, cycles, and systems that keep ecosystems healthy and balanced. In this lesson, we're going to learn about how organisms, from plants and animals to bacteria, rely on both biotic factors, which are living things, and abiotic factors, which are non-living things, to survive in their ecosystems. By understanding these relationships, we can see how everything is connected and how a healthy ecosystem depends on these interactions. First, let's talk about biotic factors. Biotic factors are all the living things in an ecosystem, like plants, animals, and microorganisms. Each living organism has a role, or niche, that helps the ecosystem function. For example, plants are producers. They make their own food through a process called photosynthesis, using sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide. By making food, plants provide energy for other organisms like herbivores, which eat the plants. In turn, herbivores such as deer provide food for carnivores like wolves. This creates a food chain, which is a pattern that shows how energy moves through an ecosystem. If one part of this chain is disrupted, it can affect the entire system. But plants and animals don't just interact with each other, they also depend on abiotic factors or non-living things to survive. Abiotic factors include things like sunlight, water, soil, temperature, and air. Without these non-living elements, life wouldn't be possible. For example, plants need sunlight and water to grow, and animals need air and water to live. These abiotic factors create the conditions that allow life to exist. The patterns of seasons, rainfall, and temperature affect how organisms live and adapt within their environments. Let's take a closer look at an example of an ecosystem, a forest. In a forest, trees, which are biotic factors, depend on abiotic factors like sunlight, soil, and water to grow. The trees provide shelter and food for animals like birds, squirrels, and insects. Squirrels might collect acorns from the trees, while birds build nests in the branches. This shows a relationship between biotic and abiotic factors. Without sunlight and water, the trees wouldn't grow, and without trees, animals would have less food and shelter. Now, let's consider how cycles work within an ecosystem. One important cycle is the water cycle. Water, an abiotic factor, moves through the environment in a pattern that supports life. Plants take in water through their roots, animals drink water to stay hydrated, and water evaporates into the air, eventually falling back to the earth as rain. This cycle ensures that living things have the water they need to survive. Similarly, the carbon cycle and nitrogen cycle help recycle important nutrients that all living things need. These cycles connect biotic and abiotic factors in ways that support life. In a healthy ecosystem, all these interactions and cycles work together to keep the environment in balance. But what happens when something in the ecosystem changes? For example, if an abiotic factor like water becomes scarce due to drought, the plants might not get enough water to grow. This would affect the herbivores that rely on plants for food, and in turn, the carnivores that rely on herbivores. This is a cause and effect relationship. When one part of the system changes, it can create a ripple effect throughout the ecosystem. Another key interaction between organisms and their environment involves adaptations. Organisms have developed ways to survive in their specific environments by adapting to the biotic and abiotic factors around them. For example, cacti in the desert have thick stems that store water because water is a scarce abiotic factor in that environment. On the other hand, animals in the Arctic have thick fur to keep them warm in freezing temperatures. These adaptations show the patterns of how organisms change and evolve to fit their environment over time. Let's look at the systems at work in a pond ecosystem. The water, sunlight, and temperature, abiotic factors, provide the right conditions for algae and plants to grow. These plants are food for fish and other small animals, and the fish become food for larger animals like birds. Even the smallest organisms, like bacteria, play an important role by breaking down dead plants and animals, recycling nutrients back into the ecosystem. This shows how the system of life in the pond is interconnected, with each part relying on the others to stay balanced. In conclusion, ecosystems are made up of biotic and abiotic factors that interact with each other in complex ways. Living things, from plants to animals to microorganisms, rely on non-living things like water, sunlight, and soil to survive. These relationships create patterns, cycles, and systems that keep ecosystems healthy and balanced. By understanding how organisms interact with their environment, we can see the important cause and effect relationships that make life on Earth possible. Recognizing these connections helps us appreciate how fragile ecosystems can be and why it's so important to protect them.